On this edition of the program, Donald Trump's Qatari plane. Inflation is lower than it has been since 2021. Will it last? We don't know. And Matt Laslo joins us to discuss all of the conflicts over the big, beautiful bill. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for May 14th, 2025. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you from Austin, Texas. Free at last, from the confines of the Travis County Courthouse, as I am now no longer subjected to judging not judging, I was jury rigging the case, not jury rigging, right? Because that has a specific connotation. Anyway, I'm done with jury duty. That lasted from Monday to Friday. It totally screwed up our week last week. I was not able to get you a Friday episode, and I just want to let you know, go listen to the most recent Great Night when it comes out this week, because I will be talking about the case in full. And I just want you to know how ridiculous it was. It was a truly, truly ridiculous conceit. Anyway, I'll save it for there so I don't pollute all of my channels with the nonsense. We are going to talk about the big, beautiful bill on this episode. Matt Laslo, the rogue mercenary of Capitol Hill. He roams those halls, getting the scoops. No gods, no masters. He puts it right out there on the internet. He is one of our favorite personalities. And we break down some of the stuff that I want you guys to just have a sense of, because we don't talk a lot about legislative stuff. I don't feel that it's not my wheelhouse. I keep abreast of it largely so I can know who is powerful, who is not powerful, how it's going to affect elections, that kind of stuff. But you're going to read a lot about it over the next 2 weeks, because the most violent part of this on the Republican side is happening right now. You have a draft of the big, beautiful bill that is out. Committees are taking votes on it. And so we have Laslo on to kind of just give you a shorthand. So when you read all this stuff, you have a sense of exactly where it's going. Because if you're not really dialed into congressional politics, it can melt your brain really fast. It's nothing but acronyms and numbers and blah, blah, blah. We're going to break it down simple for you so you can understand where things are going. It's a good combo. In the update, we're going to talk about inflation coming in coolest it's been in a while, but is that the last time? Is the trade war effects on the homeland a dud, or have we just not seen it yet? Talk about that. Talk about John Fetterman. Talk about other stuff. But we're going to begin something you might have heard a lot of, and that is Donald Trump's Qatari plane. News broke over the weekend from ABC saying that Donald Trump has a plan to receive a $400 million Qatari plane that will be retrofitted to become the new Air Force One. This comes after some delays to Boeing's replacement for the two current models, which are over 40 years old. The controversial part of this is twofold. Number one, the plane will be given to the United States of America for free. $400 million plane, then it has to be retrofitted, but it comes from the Qataris for free. It's a gift. And then possibly more controversially, it will eventually be given to the Donald Trump Presidential Library, where then Donald Trump himself could continue to use it. So essentially, Donald Trump would be getting a $400 million plane from the Qataris, plus God knows how much it costs to actually retrofit it to be Air Force One. But let's conservatively estimate $100 million. So it's a $500 million plane that then Donald Trump gets to keep. So we're going to break all this down, but here's my top line on it. I don't know if this is the most brazen corruption that I've ever seen in my entire life, or like barely a non-story. And very rarely do I feel that after doing research into it. But there's one thing that I absolutely don't know, and that is exactly when the plane would go to Donald Trump personally by way of his library. So before we get to all that, let's break down what this is. The two planes that are currently used as Air Force One have been flying since the days of George H.W. Bush. They were known to be in need of replacement as early as George H.W. Bush's son, George W. Bush, became the president in 2000. And so it was during George W.'s 2 terms that he began the process of trying to replace them. That went through the Obama administration, and then eventually in 2017, 2 planes were ordered under Donald Trump. They are 747-8s. So for aviation nerds, maybe that'll mean something to you. Now, there was a bunch of controversy that you guys might remember back in the first Trump administration about him redesigning the interior of the plane, and the paint job was going to be different. Biden comes in and scraps a lot of that, but there is a growing frustration that Boeing was not moving as fast as they should to have these planes delivered. Now, there's a lot of reasons why this might be the case. Boeing says it's because they don't have enough people that are able to build the plane that have a high enough security clearance, and so there needs to be an expediting of that. But also, Boeing has not exactly been on a heater recently. We all remember the controversy that happened with their MAX aircraft. They were part of the debacle that stranded 2 astronauts in space. Boeing hasn't been doing fantastic. But that doesn't mean that they haven't been paid handsomely for these planes. The estimation of how much it costs to get 2 new Air Force Ones, because they rotate them out, is anywhere between $3.5 billion and $5.9 billion with a B. So Donald Trump comes back into power, and he is still annoyed that Boeing has not delivered the planes that he feels he negotiated a great deal for. In his frustration, and by the way, let me also go back a little bit. The Biden administration considered canceling those contracts because they were upset with Boeing too. Donald Trump tours another 747-8. This one was formerly owned by the Qatari government, was currently in the United States, and was already fitted for a royal family. So it had many of the luxurious accoutrements that you might expect in an Air Force One. This plane is 13 years old and is valued around $400 million. Now, that's a lot, but considering we just heard what the 2 brand new Air Force Ones are going to cost, let's keep a general sense of proportion, because there's about to be some more gigantic numbers that are rolling your way. And here's why. Because when we talk about a $400 million airplane from Qatar, it made me wonder about the kind of money that comes in from Qatar all the time. Because Qatar is a massive customer of American weapons, up to and including Airplanes. In fact, I got it all here. They have bought Boeing F-15QA fighter jets. This was in November of 2016. 72 F-15QA multi-role fighters. 36 F-15QAs for about $12 billion in 2017. They have bought attack helicopters. They have bought unmanned drones, a missile defense system, and on and on and on. In fact, let me just give you some big numbers here, just to give you a sense of the scale with which we are talking about. In 2014, they bought $11 billion worth of weapons. In 2016, they bought $21.1 billion worth of weapons. In 2016, it was $124 million, so a light year. 2018, $712 million. 2018, it was $3 billion. 2019, $215 billion. 2020, it was $1.1 billion. 2022, $1 billion. And in 2025, $1.96 billion. That's a lot of money. All in all, it is estimated that they have spent roughly $26 billion buying weapons from the United States from companies like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, General Atomics, and USMI. And so when you think of things at that scale, that we are talking about weapons sales and plane sales that happen into the $20+ billion range, when you think of the Qatari government maybe throwing in a $400 million sweetener to make sure that they get their weapons. Some of these deals are controversial, for the record. It doesn't seem crazy, nor does it seem particularly for me to be something that would be over the top in the world of multi-billion-dollar transactions between governments. However, all of that changes if what ABC, who first reported this story, is correct in their reporting, in my mind. That's because ABC reported that Donald Trump would get this plane retrofitted. It would be gifted by the Qatari government. It would then be upgraded to an Air Force One, and Donald Trump would fly on it. But here was the key. Donald Trump would be transferred that plane via his library no later than January 1st, 2029. That would be before the next president, be they Republican or Democrat, was sworn in. And the reason why that is something that is a red line for me is because we don't know if these Boeing contracts are even going to come to fruition. Both the Biden administration and the Trump administration now have talked openly about canceling them. So that means that if the Boeing planes, which are now slated to be delivered in 28, are actually going to be delivered, is a gigantic question mark. And so if Donald Trump got a $400 million Qatari plane in, retrofitted to be Air Force One, and then took it and forced the new president to use the old planes, well, that would be something that would be brazenly corrupt and ridiculous, in my opinion. But so far, there are conflicting reports about what ABC initially said. Other reporting has suggested that the plane would only be transferred to the Trump library after the delivery of the Boeing planes, meaning that the plane that would come in would continue to be used as an Air Force One until it was no longer needed as an Air Force One. At which point, it is certainly a sweet deal for Donald Trump to get a presidential plane in his library, or at least through his library, that he could use for his personal gain and his post-presidential lifestyle. But he would not be degrading the next American president to do it. Now, we don't know what Donald Trump or his library's plans are with this plane. But one of the things that you have heard, possibly, is that Ronald Reagan's library did get access to his plane that he primarily flew on. That is a little bit convoluted, in my opinion, though, because Ronald Reagan didn't get the plane right after he left office. That exact plane stayed in commission through Clinton. In fact, its last flight was flying Clinton home after the inauguration of George W. Bush. It was only then that Boeing flew it to San Bernardino and then disassembled the entire plane and reassembled it inside the Reagan Library. You might have noticed it in a few of Donald Trump's most famous debate performances, where he had the backdrop of Air Force One behind him in all the debates that took place at the Reagan Library. So, is this a scenario where the plane would stay in the rotation of Air Force Ones while they are waiting for the Boeings? Would then eventually go to the Trump library and then disassembled and reassembled so everybody could see Donald Trump's bigger, more opulent plane than Reagan's? That also seems very Donald Trump to me. It does highlight something that I find to be very, very frustrating, because Trump is not somebody that hides from questions that are asked. And I do think that there are important questions to be asked here. He has faced bipartisan criticism for this particular deal, to the point where I almost wonder whether or not he's just going to fold it into some Qatari arms deal that he's actually in the Middle East right now to help discuss. But the operative question that I would love for him to answer specifically is whether or not he plans on personally using this plane, and if he would take it out of the rotation of the American presidency before there are replacements for it. If the answer is yes to either of those, then I do think that the American public needs to know. Unfortunately, most of the dialogue that I have seen, including the direct questions to Trump, have centered around the idea of whether or not it's appropriate as a gift. And that, to me, is the least interesting part about this. Just because of the amount of money that passes between these two governments, so literal planes can go back and forth. Anyway. That's my thought. Update, then Laslo. This is your update, brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you head on over and you sign up on our Substack. Heads up, I'm going to have to make a call that I don't want to make. One of the coolest things on Substack is that they have a really good chat on their app. It has been a far better than I was expecting hub of conversation between you guys, the most dedicated people to this program. It is often awesome for real-time stuff. It was huge during the election when a lot of stuff was breaking at any given time, and I pay a real close attention to it because I think the Substack app is really good. I made a decision early on, against the recommendation of Substack for the record, that my chat was going to be open, meaning you didn't have to be a paying subscriber to interact with it. And the reason why is that I think that when it comes to conversation, I want as many people participating as possible. It's a rarity on the internet that you have like-minded people, and I want them to be able to interact with each other, whether or not they have the scratch to pony up for the extra content. I'm a man of the people like that. Unfortunately, Substack has built an amazing feature that doesn't quite have the guardrails on it that, in my opinion, they will eventually need. And so The spam protection ain't great. We've had repeated posts of people putting out these bogus GoFundMes allegedly for Gaza that I don't think are real. And they always are accompanied by AI slop, and they never have any kind of redeeming quality to them. And so I keep deleting them. But the problem is that Substack is very, by default, notification happy. They want you to read stuff on their app. And so chat is no different. And a lot of you guys get blasted with notifications every time something pops up in the chat. So I'm going to have to make the chat subscriber only. And all of these AI slot merchants that want to steal money from my folks, well, they're at least going to have to pay me first to do it. So if you have not subscribed, I would encourage you to do it. I don't want to turn on the subscriber only button, but it looks like that's just going to be the case. So there we go. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Head on over there. 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Even when I didn't do 2 free episodes, the 2 bonus episodes came out last week. Let's go ahead and get to some of the stories we didn't have a chance to talk about. 2 aides, Madeline Moore and Caroline Schaefer, recently left Senator John Fetterman's office, continuing a trend of staff departures amid concerns about his shifting political stance and health. Their exits came shortly before a New York Magazine article cited growing worries among staff about Fetterman's mental and physical condition, and claims that he denied as a one-source hit piece. Former top aides have also left in the past year and a half. Critics cite Fetterman's strong support of Israel and meeting with Donald Trump as alienating, while defenders argue he's under fire from progressives for not strictly adhering to democratic orthodoxy. The article about him that came out last week was troubling. And even if you believe that it's a little rich that we hear ex-aides torch their old boss like John Fetterman in the same chamber that protected Dianne Feinstein for years, it's still worrying when you hear about somebody who has openly discussed having depression that put him in the hospital and then apparently got into a horrific car wreck when he refused an aide to help drive him home, and instead apparently was texting on the phone and hit another car. Mark Halperin, who has been reconstituted from the Me Too nether realm to be one of the biggest news breakers in politics, said on his two-way show this morning that everything you've heard about Fetterman is real, people are concerned, and there is more that you have not heard. And so I tend to believe that both things are true here. I've been on the record about my concern about John Fetterman ever since I flew all the way to Pennsylvania to cover him during his race against Oz, Dr. Oz, and he no-showed the event, lied about why he was no-showing it, and then eventually had to reveal that he had a stroke. With that being said, I don't know if this would be covered in the same way if he had not pissed off his progressive base. That's largely where his staff came from. His staff is largely disillusioned with him, among many reasons, because of Israel. And he's been acting erratically. Is he the only senator to be acting erratically? Would we like to hear about other senators who have done other things that may or may not be looked at as nice or proper or healthy in the eyes of the American people? Yes, I do think that more is coming out because of his politics, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't have a problem. And so I would hope that he would deal with it. But based on some of the coverage, I don't know if that's going to happen. For the record, I'm going to call it now. The moment of greatest humor for me in this scenario will be when progressives successfully primary John Fetterman with Connor Lamb, the guy that they gleefully ran over with John Fetterman back when he won his Democratic primary. The DNC Credentials Committee voted to nullify February's vice chair elections for David Hogg and Malcolm Kenyatta, citing procedural violations involving a combined ballot. The move follows internal controversy following Hogg's $20 million push to primary Democratic incumbents, which has drawn backlash from party leaders who argue DNC officials should not influence primaries. Hogg denounced the decision as retaliation, while Kenyatta called it a procedural overreach and criticized Hogg for making the issue about himself. Both remain in their roles for now and are eligible to run again if the full DNC votes to redo the election as recommended by the committee. This is about getting David Hogg out of there. It's just that simple. We're going to talk more about this on Friday's episode with Bill Scher, but as much as I am always here to defend the Broward County public school education for which I got, I don't know if it has benefited David Hogg in quite the same way because I don't know exactly how smart the young man is. He is certainly ambitious and he is good on television. And to be totally frank with you, I agree with him on many of his points that you should be creating an anti-fragile party that can survive some vigorous primarying. Unfortunately, I also agree with the DNC that you can't do that from inside the tent. And so either you can be a voice that has that opinion that then separates himself from his pack, or you can stay out of the DNC and rattle the cage from the outside. But you can't be both, and that's what he's trying to be. Is it rich that the DNC is finding any reason why they can get him out? And now there is a diversity reason. Part of the reason why this has come to pass is because there was not adequate attention paid to some of the diversity requirements in the DNC bylaws. Yes, that is also rich. But looks like Hogg must go. And finally, April's inflation data showed little evidence of trade war effects, with annual CPI rising just 2.3%, the lowest since February 2021. Core CPI rose at 2.1 annualized over the past 3 months, aligning with the Fed's 2% target. So on one hand, mission accomplished. The Fed's been looking for 2% inflation. That's exactly where they wanted it. Looks like we hit it in April. You know, that would be the case if the other thing that happened in April didn't happen, which is Liberation Day. The tariffs announced on April 2nd, which were then paused for 90 days, have most businesses still working through pre-tariff inventory. So inventory that they bought for cheaper. Categories heavily reliant on imports like apparel showed price declines. And recent de-escalations in tariffs, including a drop from 145% to 30% on Chinese imports, reduced fears of a summer inflationary spike, though cumulative effects might still emerge in the coming months. I don't know how much we're going to see consumer level inflation. I know for a fact that in my life, I've been around people that sell to larger retailers. And retailers have told their suppliers, don't come to us with tariff increases. We are selling the products that you are contractually selling to us at the rates we negotiated. Where you get your stuff is where you get your stuff. But Target, Walmart, we're not adjusting. We're not renegotiating. If you got to take a haircut, then you take a haircut, or you find a new place to get the stuff so you can make your margin. Not our problem. And if that's the case, then we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. Inflation might just continue to rise at that 2% rate. It's not like we are expecting deflation. And if that's the case, then I do think that the Liberation Day stuff will kind of come and go. The contention by the administration has always been that, yes, you're probably going to have to pay more to import products from foreign lands. And if you are in an import business where your product quite simply just does not exist in America and cannot be manufactured in America, then that is something that you are going to have to deal with. But in general, you're probably going to come out ahead because we are going to slash regulations. We are going to make permanent tax cuts so you don't have to worry about that element of your business going up. And we're going to have the economy humming. So there's going to be plenty of people that want to buy your product. And so, you know, as they say, you can make it up on volume. But that's a lot of ifs. And we don't know whether or not it's going to be able to come together. And wiser people than me have guessed about the trends of the global economy. But for right now, there's not a lot of signs that there is a gigantic inflationary spike coming. Doesn't mean there won't be. Just right now. And that's your update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com is where you need to go if you want to get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. And now, the one and only Matt Laslo. Over the next few weeks, you are all going to read quite a bit about the negotiations of one big, beautiful bill. It's not me hyperbolically saying that there is a bill that is big and beautiful, but rather the actual name of essentially all of Donald Trump's campaign promises, as well as an extension of the tax cuts and more. And so to break down everything around it, and specifically to kind of decode some of the context of what you're going to be reading about over the next few weeks, we bring in our good friend, the madman running the halls of Congress, the Ronin of congressional reporters, Matt Laslo. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm always shocked when I get invited back.
Well, you know, look, I think that there are a lot of great people that we know that cover Congress, and all of them do a phenomenal job, and we love talking to all of them. But if there's one person that I know who can reveal his true thoughts on everything at all times without worrying about any part of it, it is Matt. And that is why we love to have you on. So here's what I want to get to. This show normally focuses on elections. We focus on candidates. We focus on how people get to Congress. And I almost stopped doing this show 4 years ago when the Build Back Better bill, which I don't know why we are on triple Bs for all of these gigantic pieces of legislation, it almost killed me. So what I wanted to do for people is, as they're reading all this coverage, to know what it's really about and really get a sense of, okay, is this thing going to happen or is it not? How real is any of the I'm definitely not going to vote for it stuff? And so here's what I want to start with, because from my vantage point, we're hearing about SALT. SALT stands for state and local tax deduction. It has been a big point of contention. But from your frame of reference, when you are wandering the halls of Congress, what are the SALT conversations that you are hearing?
I mean, the funny thing about it, because we have this quote unquote populist president in the White House, at least that's what he ran on again. And that's what he supposedly won on. But this is a debate about how wealthy people basically in the Northeast and then folks out in California. Now, when this debate happens in this Republican setting, it's not really a debate with the California members, because this administration doesn't really care about the Cali blue. They care more about the Northeast red. And so that's where, this is a discussion about wealthy people's mortgages. But I mean, it's in their defense, it's more than that, because this is the way the tax code has been set up in some of these states, in New York and New Jersey. It's not just the wealthy, but you're not getting many tears from Southern Republicans or, Texas Republicans or Midwestern Republicans over these debates about how much you can deduct from your mortgage when it comes to federal taxes.
Yeah. So this is like for, and I think you hit on something that I want to go back and drill down on. But state and local tax deduction basically says if you have a blue state with high taxes, high state taxes, you can deduct what you have paid to state taxes against your federal income tax. And that was something that you used to be able to do. And then the initial Trump tax cut said, okay, now there's going to be a cap. There's going to be a $10,000 cap on how much you can deduct from your federal taxes if you paid them in state taxes. As you might imagine, there are some people, some of whom may or may not be fundraisers for the Republican Congress people in Long Island and New Jersey, that would pay more than $10,000 in state taxes, these very high tax blue states. And so now there is this fight. And I think you pointed out two things here. Number one, this is vociferously opposed by almost everyone else in the Republican Congress, and more specifically, any of the budget hawks, specifically any budget hawk that lives in a red state. And two, that when we hear about SALT deduction being from California, New Jersey, and New York, what I have heard, and you tell me whether or not I am incorrect, is that it's not even really the California people. And to be totally honest, it's not even really the New Jersey people. It's the Long Island and upstate Republicans in New York. Is that consistent with what you have seen and heard on Capitol Hill?
Yes, because those members, even though it's a small handful, they kind of decided the tilt of power here in Speaker Johnson's house. And so even though it's a small handful, 5, maybe 6 members, those members are going to go to the mats for this, because even without this debate, which definitely puts the spotlight on them, even without this debate, they have the spotlight on their seats. And so both parties are already planning to drop millions, if not already dropping millions, to try and salvage those seats. And so this, again, in this, we have a populist, quote unquote, populist in the White House again. And here, what might derail his entire agenda is complaints from the wealthier wing of the party, which is pretty fascinating, to say the least.
So, from what I have heard, things they haven't yet gotten to the "we will blow this all up" phase. People have said that behind the scenes, that they will blow it up. Like you mentioned, that they will go to the mattresses on this. What you're going to read, dear listener and viewer, is a lot about numbers, right? So I want to keep you guys in the clear here when it comes to where the numbers are, because a lot of this is just going to melt into your brain. Matt, you do a admirable job when you have to cover these things, because everybody in Congress speaks in binary, where it's just all acronyms and numbers that are very, very easy to get lost in. But for listeners, right now, the cap is $10,000. You used to be able to, before the Trump tax cuts, way back in 2017, you used to be able to deduct whatever you wanted from your state and local taxes. Then it came down to $10,000. From what I have heard, the current compromise is at $30,000. So you would be able to deduct $30,000 from your federal taxes. That's about as high as the Freedom Caucus and everybody else that hates this stuff is willing to go, because they know that they got to give a little. So they're going to give to 30,000. Now, whether or not they'll actually go along with it, we'll see. But that's right now where the compromise is. What I have been told is that what the SALT caucus is willing to settle for is 60,000. And by the way, we are talking about 60,000 per person, which means that for couples filing jointly, that would be over 120,000. Is there anything that I've said that you've heard different?
No, not at all. The beautiful thing is the wrong word, but for me as a political observer, in a hyper-partisan era,
Yeah.
I'm always looking for either what I call Democrat on Democrat violence or Republican on Republican violence. And here, I mean, again, as you said, this is Trump's agenda.
This is all of it. This is all of it. Yeah.
And so he's been ruling with the golden Sharpie, even though it's his black Sharpie. And so all that's been kind of a facade, all the executive orders and everything he's been doing. Yeah, it's been a facade that's had real world consequences if you've got any money invested or if you're a small business owner, et cetera. But what Republicans have been focused on from day one is, especially Republican leaders, House and Senate, is getting this massive package passed. And the funny thing is, so yes, you're 100% right there with the new numbers. The new numbers are 30,000%, or pardon me, 30,000 in the House package. And those members of the SALT caucus want it brought up to at least 60,000, if not done away with altogether. Guys, this is just the window dressing. Like, what this really is this GOP fight to get to this arbitrary $2 trillion that they've laid out. And the other stuff happening in the House to get to that magical $2 trillion includes like massive cuts to Medicaid or, utter restructuring and rethinking of Medicaid. And so instantly when this comes out after the weekend, we've already got Republican senators like Ron Johnson from Wisconsin opposing this because the cuts don't go deep enough. And so we'll see. There's been a lot of magic that's happened because of Trump's MAGAification of today's Republican Party. And so I'm very much expecting a little more magicification, which isn't even a word, but what does the lexicon matter in the Trump era? So they're rewriting it as they go. Yeah, brother.
You've highlighted something that I have been kind of surprised by, because what I understood going into this fight was that there was really three camps that were going to be very, very hard to get on the same page. And right now, as you pointed out, the Democrats are going to make an entire meal out of any and everything that happens that adjusts with Medicaid, right? And so that's what you've already seen, the protests and the messaging and everything coming out. But like you said, Democrat on Republican violence, boring, especially when we're looking at something that needs to pass the House. The three groups that I assumed going into this, and may still make themselves heard, were the SALT caucus, which you've already talked about. They want one thing. There is the immigration hawks who are going to want, this is kind of before the administration started, but they would want a certain amount of money and certain amount of restrictions and certain amount of whatevers on especially something that's going to have as big of a ramification as this does. I think that they've quieted a bit because I don't know if anybody would be able to go to the right of Trump on immigration at this point. Nobody's going to have a lot of purchase in saying that he's not doing enough, aside from, a certain segment, but it's going to be small. And then there's the third, and that's who you brought up, and that's the budget hawks. The budget hawks who are very much of the belief that if there is full Republican control of the House, Senate, and White House, then the result has to be that we are getting closer, if not to a balanced budget. Are they going to look at something that, especially according to the Congressional Budget Office and stuff like that, is going to be a net loser for the government in making the tax cuts permanent? Those are the three groups. One of them I feel like has kind of been sidelined because of the immigration record, as we discussed. One of them is the SALT group. But let's talk, when we say budget hawks, people that, and let's focus on the House right now. Who are the names that come to mind, just so people know in their head when these stories start coming out and we start seeing the bold names, like who are the budget hawks that are going to make the biggest stink here?
Well, and that's the interesting thing. Right now, some of those who might make the biggest stink could be the quietest in public, which is maybe a conversation for another day. But in this fight, we're going to see the usual suspects. Like head of the Freedom Caucus, new head of it, Andy Harris. And one thing he's been a little more quiet as head of the Freedom Caucus, kind of letting his members go out there and speak. And that could be because there's divisions on a lot of this stuff within the Freedom Caucus, or especially divisions on strategy, on how do they get what they want. But we've seen them come together and flex on many things. And it seems like they're almost giddy right now, sitting in the background, because whenever they are able to get to Trump one-on-one, they tell the rest of their conference, hey guys, Trump's on our side. And so that's where even though the president went after someone like Chip Roy, saying, oh, in the past, like you were grandstanding, he's this Texas congressman, Trump's targeted him. But in the end, him and Trump were kind of aligned on some of these things. They've just been disaligned on strategy. And that's where it'll be interesting to see whether we see cohesion in any parts of the Republican Party. Because, right now, if we circle back to SALT, what do we have? Well, someone like Mike Lawler, you might have heard his name a lot in the last election. Well, he's rumored to be running for governor of New York. And so he's got different things at stake than someone who we've been hearing a lot of the Republicans on Long Island. And so when it comes to the Freedom Caucus, you also have some of those same tensions where it doesn't seem like the Freedom Caucus is as aligned as they once were. And so because Speaker Johnson's numbers are just so thin, if you have, and this
to get the vote he needs is what you're saying, that there's only so many people that can peel off.
He can only lose so many. And so that's where when you see Trump weigh in and the whole party kind of fall in line, that's kind of the way they've succeeded in the recent past. Unless that happens, and because what did we hear from Trump last week? He was telling the whole party, hey, we're going to have to raise taxes on the wealthy to get this done. That lands like a brick on Capitol Hill with Republicans. Trump might actually be doing better math there than his members on Capitol Hill. Yeah. Because members on Capitol Hill are trying to protect Medicaid. Some are trying to protect these deductions over here and these. Well, Trump's like, wait, that's a lot of clutter. What if we just
brought in more money
on the wealth? Right? Yeah. I mean, I'm not good at math, but Trump's math does add up. Getting rid of some of those tax breaks for the wealthy, that gets you to at least $2 trillion in cuts a lot quicker than dancing around over here and over here. And so just to get back to your question, Speaker Johnson, everywhere he steps, there's a landmine. Everywhere. And that's kind of by design. And so we'll see. We've seen his power increase and the power of groups like Freedom Caucus, et cetera, decrease when Trump has gotten on the phone and just eviscerated any morality, like any campaign promises. Like we've just seen Republicans wither at the voice of the Donald. And so we'll see. Last we heard from Donald Trump before he went overseas on this was raise taxes on the wealthy. Again, that's because he's not good at math, but he's doing the math better than some of these chairs on Capitol Hill, it seems.
It is crazy that all right, so this is something I've heard from behind the scenes. They have done the hokey pokey on raising the marginal rate for the highest rate, right? So this is the ultra wealthy. They have done the hokey pokey on that, from my math, at least twice, where they were initially definitely going to do it. And they were pissed off at Grover Norquist. And they're like, screw Grover. If he wants to come in and yell at us and say we're violating our tax pledge, then he can eat it. It's a new world. It's a MAGA party. It's a dive bar party, not a country club party. Who cares? We're going to do it. And then somebody, Newt Gingrich gets in the ear of Trump, and Trump's like, no, you want to know what? George H.W. Bush said no new taxes, and then he raised taxes. That's a really stupid thing to do. Why would I be an idiot and raise taxes when I said to not raise taxes? And then everybody goes, screw it. No. Of course, we're the Republican Party. Of course we don't raise taxes. We don't raise taxes on anybody. That's the whole point, especially job creators at the top of the food chain. We should be giving them more money. That has flipped twice. Where I've heard it now is that it is back out. They are not going to raise the marginal tax rate. Will that change between now and the next, when there's a vote? Who has any idea? What I was told, and this is from the more conservative elements of the Republican caucus, was that they were ready to face the Grover Norquist backlash. I joked that they were trading Batya Unger Sargon for trading Grover Norquist for Batya Unger Sargon in terms of the intellectual framework of their tax policy. But now it appears that that's back out. The same tax rate is going to stay the same tax rate. And, I don't know. It's a very interesting world where that's even a possibility.
And this is the funny thing. So remember, I'm in Washington, D.C., so I'm living in the bubble. But within that bubble, we have different universes, and the White House is one universe. And then we have Capitol Hill, which is its own separate universe. But within that separate universe, we have two different universes, which is the Senate and the House.
And they're very different.
And it's like the oddest thing to me is being like, wait, Trump, in one sense, might have slipped up by actually seeing reality a little more clearer than everyone else inside the Beltway. Because all the rest of us are living within these like little nuanced negotiations that when you see one part, one sliver of today's Republican Party, the SALT group, when they go, we're aghast at this. Well, that changes the entire calculation over here if you lose just 5 or 6 of them. And so that's where Trump might be actually seeing things a lot more clear than folks on Capitol Hill, because he's like, hey, your negotiations, like, I don't see what you guys are negotiating getting us to where we need to be for this, not even haircut, like take off a third of the head, at $2 trillion. And so, and don't anyone forget, the $2 trillion number was just kind of pulled out of thin air. It was just
you were talking about, when you say $2 trillion, you're talking about $2 trillion in cuts compared to the last budget, right?
The last budget. Yeah. And that's a lot, and it's hard. And like my job as a political reporter is to throw stones at glass houses. Thank God I don't have to think through these things. But I'm also not the one making campaign promises that might be grounded in just BS. They might just be growing some really dank mushrooms because they're just doing this in the dark when they say, $2 trillion in cuts. And so that's where now they're fighting against their own promises. And we'll see how long this deck of cards can stand up. But every time we've thought, it's going to crumble, when they passed, when they pulled, just fought tooth and nail in Speaker Johnson's house, and then they got it done. And a lot of us, and, we were like dumbfounded by it. The Trump mandate, at least as congressional Republicans see it, is alive and well, and it's coming for their head. If they're not on board with Trump and his platform, and if they're seen as an impediment to it, like, boom, they're a pawn that's gone. And so they're at war. So as much as I said, like, Trump might be the voice of reason here, which, guys, if you know me, you know I never say that. But that's where he's like, no, to get the math right, we might have to raise taxes on the wealthy. Well, you might be seeing clearly, now get that message through to your Republicans on the House and Senate, and it all falls apart. But they'll do anything to help Trump in his legacy right now. For one, out of self-preservation. For two, out of like they just seem to bow down to this guy and live in what other world he lives in. And so we'll see. Like, I don't see them raising taxes on the wealthy, but I see them doing anything they can to get to that 2 trillion, which we don't know what that looks like at this point.
I've been shocked, and we are talking on Tuesday at about 3:00 Eastern time. This will come out Tuesday night. But when the bill hit on Sunday, so one version of the bill without all the actual nasty stuff hit Sunday, and then all the other stuff hit yesterday. And I got sent it. But I was very, very curious over the next 24 hours what the reaction was going to be. Because you know very well, this is the fertile ground for wild quotes. When a gigantic must-pass bill is in draft form, that's when you get all of the absolutely not, over my dead body. This is something I can never vote for. And I haven't seen a lot of it. I've seen a lot of little like pss, 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 in like the political press. I've seen the salt snipes, but I haven't seen the like over my dead body. This, I mean, sure, you get it from Massey and stuff like that. People that you would expect that are probably never going to vote for it anyway. But I don't know. I was expecting there to be more of that. Are you similarly surprised?
Yes and no. One thing, I forget which outlet, it might have actually been Politico. And I only pause in saying that because I don't like to give them props ever, except for Politico magazine is really good. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure it was Politico last week where they started reporting on this trend of, instead of there being fireworks in these committee hearings, and markups where the bill's actually going through, we've seen Republicans just allow Democrats to like yell into the wind. And, it only becomes an actual battle or whatever when a Republican weighs in and just, meets them on the mat. Well, so Republicans, even though the party's fractured from, all these different divisions, like, what I don't know is whether it's Speaker Johnson or party leaders or different individual Republican chairs, but they've been able to keep these fights very internal. And so that's where this week we're kind of hearing this SALT debate over tax deductions for mortgages and all that. We're seeing that come out into the light for kind of the first real time. Like, it's been there a little bit in the past, but now that we have language written down, that's out in the public now, which is kind of a wise, I also teach political comms at a few universities. So like, that's a wise move for them to come out now. They have language, they can oppose that language. But what'll be interesting is inside these individual hearings to see whether party cohesion takes over and whether that kind of quashes some of these regional differences that we've been seeing. And this is where Democrats can actually, I think, overplay their hand in this new Congress, because if they might make the Republicans become more cohesive than Republicans, right now, afternoon on Tuesday.
On Tuesday.
We're hearing that one of these, I think it's maybe the Ways and Means Committee, that they might be going 25, 27, maybe 28 hours. They might be beating a record because Democrats are planning so much opposition to these new proposals. So we'll see. That might actually backfire and make Republicans come together more. And because Republicans have just ruled with such an iron fist, we might see some promises made at the leadership level that we never hear out in public. Again, Republicans as a party on Capitol Hill are going to do whatever they can to appease Trump. We don't know the definition of whatever they can. at this
and
point.
also it's like
And that's
they don't have a choice. And anyone I've talked to that is like involved in this, when I ask them, all right, is this going to pass? And they're like, oh, I don't know. The SALT people, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, it's going to pass for this reason. They don't have any other choice. The Republicans, if they don't pass this bill, face responsibility for everybody's taxes going up, right? Because if the Trump tax cuts expire, then all of a sudden everybody's tax cuts go up. And if you think that you're going to survive that as a swing district congressman on Long Island, that I fought for SALT and still all the taxes went up for all of my constituents who never cared about SALT, or the deal that was on the table was for $30,000, which covers like 90% of your district, probably just not the people that are funding your campaign. Like, then you're not going to have anywhere to hide, and you're going to be excoriated by MAGA, and you're going to be exiled. So you can join Liz Cheney on The View. But other than that, there's not going to be a whole lot of room for you in politics if your entire career you've just been ejected out of the plane. So they are going to do it. And that's, to me, the shocking thing is that this has gone as smooth when I have never heard that Mike Johnson is a strong speaker. He seems to be, he still is the Hudsucker proxy guy who is just kind of floating along for a reason that is beyond his comprehension. This is all Trump. And so far, even with all the Liberation Day craziness and the stock market tanking and everything that went on, I have heard remarkably little remarkably little fear from the Republican caucus. And I think part of it is because they know that the only way out is through. And even if you're facing a 3/4 chance that you're going to get killed in 26, the solution isn't to kill yourself today. So like this needs to go. They need to hope and pray that the economy is good in 26 and they can say, see, we trusted the plan and everything worked out.
The way, and this metaphor might not work, but it's almost like they're debating the length of the plank they're going to walk off of, and whether, they might be able to like tie one rope to that plank, but like everyone's prepared to like walk off that plank. It's just like, hey, can we like grab onto this little splinter over here or this one over here? But yeah, like because the whole party became so unified in pushing Trump's agenda in the last election. Because, I mean, we can't even call it the conservative agenda or the Republican Party agenda. We just see this real-time adaptation to whatever Trump does, or whichever direction he wants to take the party. And that's something contemporary Republicans, have by and large found themselves getting very familiar with. If we go to the Senate side, look at the non-drama around Trump's very controversial cabinet nominations. Like us in the media or whatever, us who've read books, we were expecting, this isn't going to fly. This isn't going to fly. And that's where we have to, us as the elites, we have to keep checking ourselves and being like, all the history we've read, wait, that doesn't compare to what they're doing. And they're giddy about just upending the way of things. This is neither here nor there, but I've been reporting just today on Carrie Lake turning Voice of America into the OAN network, which is just insane. And even just talking to lawmakers about that, some of them, their minds are blown. They hadn't heard of it, but they're like, wait, what are you talking about? Let me see documentation of that. It's like, there's so much happening at so many levels of government that are pure, like the definition of unprecedented and just upending. And I think that also gives a lot of cover to what these legislators are doing on Capitol Hill. At least they believe for now.
Yeah. I wonder, I assume this bill is going to be passed. in a form that is close to where we are talking about it now. Because usually in these scenarios, if it's going to wobble off the track, you hear about it really, really loudly now. And so it's like push comes to shove, it's going to wind up being a bill that puts more on the credit card. They usually are, and if that takes the SALT people being happy because it goes from 30 to 50 or something like that, who knows? Maybe that seems like if that's the biggest problem they have, and it's not like it'll happen. And this is looking a little bit down the road. Once this is done, I wonder how long Mike Johnson has, because I think that there's a lot of the Republican caucus that doesn't like him for various reasons, feels like he's double dealing, like many members feel that speakers have. But I wonder if knives aren't coming for him once the big, beautiful bill passes, because you're going to start to see there's growing impatience that there was not more of a legislative calendar in the first 100 days. Yeah. I can understand why, and I can understand his excuse why, as to like, hey, look, we had to get the following things done. They were these big high pressure votes. We had to whip them. We had to make sure that everything was on the table. And then everything was put into this big, beautiful bill. So we are focusing on that. Then we can deal with everything else. I'm going to be very curious to see in what order and at what velocity all of these priorities start coming, and whether or not, if they don't happen at the schedule that some blocks of this caucus don't like, whether or not the knives come out.
So at the start of this this Congress, my prediction was by the end of it, we're going to see a speaker, Jim Jordan, because he's like drunk the Kool-Aid. He's MAGA. That's where Trump isn't wed to Speaker Johnson at all. Speaker Johnson's a useful idiot for him to have, because Johnson's going to do whatever he wants. And then if things fall apart, Trump can just, like he's probably going to do with Musk any day now, just say, that was, he was never totally aligned with me anyway, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Someone brought up to me last week that we might not see Speaker Jim Jordan, but they said, expect maybe Speaker Elise Stefanik, because she didn't get the UN gig and Trump wanted her to be head of the UN. And because she's seen as more sane, formerly moderate, an actual New Yorker, upstate New Yorker, that she might be able to be that bridge between conservatism past and MAGA present versus MAGA future. And so I've never seen Speaker Johnson as surviving this entire Congress, or at least not getting a challenge. But now it's like, you might be able to see Trump actually get empowered when it comes to the Republican base and all of that. Because everyone take a step back. Republicans themselves are freaked the F out right now. They are worried about the stock market. They're worried about their businesses, et cetera. And so the party needs to send a signal to them that there's something that the party can do for them. And many of those Republicans thought it was this one big, beautiful bill. If this gets, derailed for any reason, Thune, he's going to be there as the Senate leader. It's harder to knock him out, but that's where Speaker Johnson can easily become the fall boy.
If this doesn't get done, it's apocalypse. Like it is all like right now. There is like you pointed out, an uncharacteristic fealty to the cause. You have a lot of people that were very, very, very loud about going on television and going to reporters and getting on their own social media, torching their own party and saying nasty things about each other, nasty things about other luminaries. You have not seen a lot of that. Now, that didn't go away. It's happening behind the scenes, but they know, let's not go out. Let's not pierce the veil here and do that. that shows that there is a commitment to get this done. If it doesn't get done, the crystal cracks and everything goes nuts, in my opinion.
And like, we are so primed for that because, I mean, for one, we have a Republican president of the United States calling on Republicans in Congress, who are the majorities in Congress, to raise taxes. Like, that's anathema.
Well, he is. Yeah, he is and he isn't. It's notable that he is at any time, but half the time he is, and half the time he's like, that's stupid. Why would we do that?
But like, we've just seen Republicans on the Hill just, either adapt, render themselves mute. And I'm like, come on. The only reason I'd ever want to be in politics would be able to just be a senator for a day and be like, no, whatever that guy in the White House is saying, or that gal, But no, we've had all these politicians who like are giving, like just bowing down and ceding their power to the president, which is unprecedented. And so, yeah, I think while we see the Mitch McConnells of the world slowly fade, we're seeing a new day for.
I don't know if it's unprecedented. I mean, the Democrats got 2 reconciliation bills through during Biden's term, so it's not like a slim majority reconciliation process is something that is unheard of.
Well, so no, that's not what's unheard of. There, what did you get? You got Kyrsten Sinema, former Democrat, then turned independent senator from Arizona. She was kind of forced to be publicly aligned with who she was privately, because I used to cover her when she was in the House as this like young up and coming progressive, and then to win statewide, she turned herself different. Manchin, former West Virginia senator, he's out of the party, but he was always walking that tightrope that he set up for himself between his home states, dirty, or he would say clean coal. No, I'm talking energy policy where he knew that coal was dead and dying, but he still had to give a lifeline to them. So any lifeline that he could give that, had it both ways is what only thing he could accept. And so that made, hard politics, but hard political and mathematical sense. If you want to stay in the Democratic Party, you have to have these minimum things that you stand for when it comes to the environment, stuff like that. So there was like a party minimum. And we ended up saying Sinema go independent and then Manchin leave. So it became a hard tightrope, if not an impossible one for them to walk. With the Republican Party now, we're seeing them say, hey, walk this tightrope. And then once you're on it, you're like, this is 3 different. Like my legs can't stand on all these at once. And so we've already seen conservatism, at least as we knew it a decade or 2 ago, die at the feet of MAGAism. We don't know if MAGAism, and this is the term that most Republicans apply to themselves, MAGA, whatever that is. And so we're seeing a different battle within the Republican Party for both the future of the Republican Party. I'd say not so much the present, but we just haven't seen that introspection from Republicans in the past few years. We might see it here in the next couple of weeks. Well, this might also be the only introspection we get. Yeah, go, brother.
The only thing that I would say is that we might have already seen it. I mean, this is a party that has been at war with itself for 8 years. And what I'm looking at now is obviously sparse different elements of a coalition, like you said, some of which are more subscriptive to what we would thought of as conservatism of the Reagan era or neoconservatism of the George W. Bush era, which was very much a pretty linear pathway. And then you have this entirely new coalition that comes in and it is peeling off union voters. It is peeling off minority voters. It is peeling off people that want different things than what somebody who would elect a conservative in the past. And while they all still hate each other, I don't think any of that has changed. And while they all might think that their policies are dangerous and anathema and are going to ruin the country, what I'm seeing from that party that I haven't seen in 9 years is they all know that their common future lies in Donald Trump's success. And that's remarkable because we have not seen that before. We didn't see it during any of Donald Trump's first term. Even when they got tax cuts done, there was still that conservative wing of the party that was beholden to the prior lineage that believed, well, Donald Trump's not going to stay around. We'll have some version of this that can speak to this, but it's not going to be him. He's not going to be the guy. He will get flushed out at a certain point. We'll all laugh about that one crazy time that the game show host was the president, and that'll be that. No one's under that illusion now. Everybody is like, all right, well, look, it's going to be Trump. For our own phony baloney jobs, we hope he does well, because otherwise we're out, peddling our resumes to K Street and television. But if we are here, then our hopes are the new magnified Marco Rubio, or more likely JD Vance, who is more ideologically driven to the MAGA universe than probably even Trump, because Trump comes from a bygone era where he can at least understand and speak to the conservative side. That's what I see now. Now, does that mean it can't fall apart? Absolutely not. I was expecting there to be more fireworks than there have been, but we will see. And we will follow it with Matt Laslo. Matt, where can people find you?
You can find me on X or Blue Sky or Instagram or any of those, just at Matt Laslo. Then I also play around with a little Substackage on the side. Ask a Poll. If you got a question for a politician, send it to Ask a Poll. And me or my fleet of new interns coming in any day now will gladly ask any lawmakers your questions. Because remember, it's not the politicians that make America. It's No. We're a terrible nation. Don't watch reality TV.
No, that's it. Put that in Latin. Put that in Latin on your crest. It's not the politicians that make America. It's, I don't know. I forget. That's the best. That should be the slogan. In all seriousness, if you have not heard about Matt's Ask a Poll stuff, it is exactly what he says. That he's got a few different vectors for it. So if you want to ask about any question, if you want to ask about drugs, if you want to ask about UFOs, which I assume are such the bulk of your questions that you had to create new verticals for them, then please go ahead and do it. He will. There are few things that are in more danger than the thing between Matt Laslo and a politician he wants to ask a question to. He has dexterous skills and the eye of the tiger. Matt, thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate you, brother. Be well.
And that wraps it up for us today. Politics is written and recorded by me, Justin Robert Young, in Austin, Texas, for Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor, the incomparable Will Saddlebird. We're doing it for you, man. We're doing it. The two of us against the world. If you want to email the show, you can do so, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter, Justin R. Young. Find the whole episode of the show in video. Gorgeous video. Politics on YouTube. Look, man, I'm not playing with you guys. All right? I'm not playing with you guys. Stop sending me $1. We did a little test of whether or not you guys listened to the end of the show. And I sent back a bunch of dollars because I said, this is not about me making money. This is about whether or not you listen to the end. Okay? And then I told you the next episode, stop sending me $1. All right? Stop sending me $1 and say, I listened to the end of the show. I am hopping mad that I keep getting sent $1 because I don't know whether or not you expect me to send it back. I'm telling you, I'm not sending it back. They're not going back. Kamala's not using that anymore. I'm using it now. We're not going back. That's your dollars in my Venmo. So stop sending me dollars. All right. Do not send me $1 defiantly. Don't say screw you, Justin, and send me $1. Because just so you know, you're not getting it back. Don't send me to Venmo Justin-Young-20. Eat it, sucker. Okay? I'm not down with your foolishness. Don't go to paypal.me/payjury and say up yours and send me a defiant spite dollar. All right? Don't go to Cash App, PX3 Cash, letter P, letter X, number 3 Cash, and say, suck it, nerd, and send me $1 there. Don't do it, because you're not getting it back. Whatever you do, don't send me anything you'd like. Well, no, you can send me anything you'd like in the mail. Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. Again, that is Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. We welcome anything you'd like to send in the mail, because that takes effort. But you spite dollar senders, I'm just saying, I might spite send you more money. If we're going to get into a spite money throw, I'm going to need more money if I'm going to send more money out. You can subscribe to the show. We're going to have to go to a subscriber-only chat. It's not me. It's the spammers. You can do that at takepoliticsseriously.com for about $3 a week, sometimes even less, depending on the week or depending on the month. You get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Even when I was in jury duty, I was still doing the bonus episodes. We only had 1 free episode. I did 2 bonus episodes because I love you guys so much. You can also just sign up annually. $99 for the entire year. That is less than $1 an episode when you figure in all the content that you get. It's just that simple. You do it once a year, set it and forget it. Bada bing, bada boom. But of course, the only people to get their name read on the show is our fabulous founding phylum. Too nerdy? Or just nerdy enough? L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah, Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes. Oh yeah, it's Adam. Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York. Will, the Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, a dog named Checkers, Gloria, my lovely mother. Happy Mother's Day to my mom. Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Steven, and Zombie Duck. You want your name read on the show? One place to do it. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. On Friday's edition of the program, Bill Scher joins us once again to talk about 2 things. We talk about David Hogg, and we talk about if he controlled the Democratic Party, what is the weakest spot on the Republican machine to train their fire? An answer from a learned man on Friday's edition of the show. Till then, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying that some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics. But this is the only show that dares discuss. Oh, 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show audio.